The end of COVID-19 emergency declarations today, which, by the way, just so happens to be my birthday. So thanks to everybody who's either flooding my Facebook right now or sending me messages. Greatly appreciate that. 40 years old, believe that or not. We've got a ton to get to, including how much money was spent during the COVID pandemic. And a website, usaspending.gov, allows you to track the spending of COVID-19 tax dollars. So we'll look at that here in a moment, and it's pretty incredible to see how much, $4.6 trillion offered up, and what was that for particular states, and we'll touch on that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts at 217-629-7970. Again, what are some of the more kind of absurd COVID-19 mandates that we experienced here in Illinois and elsewhere? Ted Dabrowski with WirePoints, he's been tracking this for quite some time, and he shared with one of my colleagues, Kevin Bessler, the questions about how the COVID-19 pandemic was ultimately handled, and Dabrowski saying that so many things were done wrong in Illinois when it comes to the governor's handling of COVID-19.
Businesses were forced to be closed, and businesses and livelihoods were destroyed. We were forced to carry vaccine passports. That was another destruction of freedom. And even when we knew that people who were vaccinated could spread COVID, we shut down schools. We destroyed a lot of children's lives.
Now, Dabrowski, again, the president of WirePoints, he said that the COVID pandemic were really some dark days for Illinoisans.
It was a horrible period, and it didn't have to be that way. And we know that because we saw other states and some countries that didn't pursue the same draconian policies and did as well or better than we did from a COVID lives perspective.
Now, Governor J.B. Pritzker in the past, he had said that, he has some regrets. One of the regrets, he said, was not having a mask mandate in place earlier in the pandemic. But during a campaign ad in the most recent campaign last year, here's some of what the governor had to say.
Look, I may not have gotten every decision right, but at every step along the way, I followed the science. This is a state that cares deeply about keeping each other healthy and making sure that we get through this together.
So I want to hear your thoughts. Again, some of the more wild mandates that happened over the past 3.5 some odd years or so of COVID-19 emergency declarations. Governor Pritzker is ending his 42nd consecutive emergency declaration today, coinciding with the end of the federal emergency declaration. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, Greg. Good morning. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
No problem. I think as far as the mandates go, I think once we were like 6 months into it, there was no need to be shutting things down the way that we did and stuff like that. I mean, I think initially we didn't know what we were dealing with. We only had the slowing the spread to control the thing, and I think that was, so at least the first few months or so, I think they had to do what they did. After that, it got a little ridiculous, and frankly, it was all about control, not getting the virus calmed down.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at the impact on children and their education, there were tons of concerns, not just from the remote learning, but even when they went back into schools, they had to wear masks. And that was even after we knew that the vaccines weren't as effective as they were sold to be. So there's a lot of different policies that were enacted, including vaccine passports to go into restaurants in Chicago and so on. Again, even after we knew that even if you were vaccinated, you could still spread it to others. So appreciate the call, and would love to hear more of your thoughts out there. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. But obviously, a lot of money went out. And again, to look at usaspending.gov, a official government website, 4 point some odd trillion dollars allocated over that time. How much did Illinois get? $107 billion. Again, $107 billion in public and private taxpayer-funded COVID-19 relief. All right. that's all going to dry up. And also a lot of people saying that that's why we have out of control inflation. That's why we have out of control costs and so on. Take another call here at 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Yes, hello, birthday boy. Sean Gotti here. You know, my daughter really did suffer from that whole e-learning thing and the whole masks in school. She couldn't stand it. She always told me, she's like, I just can't breathe very well on these things. And I can't help but think that she wasn't the only one, but I only have my daughter for an example. And the whole mask thing altogether. I read a study by a doctor. I can't remember his name. He had said, and no matter the mask that you have on, if there's a gap on your face somewhere in the mask, the COVID-19 virus was 50 times smaller the width of a human hair. If there was a gap in any of it, you're breathing it in.
But if you brought that up during the heat of the pandemic, then you were called a COVIDiot. You were called, a grandma killer and a whole host of other things. I think that the pandemic it really brought out some of the worst of us. At the same time, bringing out some of the best of us. People checking on their neighbors, healthcare professionals working crazy hours. But ultimately, when it came to the public and the back and forth, it was pretty chaotic. One last call here. Good morning. You're on WMAY. What's up? You would have been. All right. So another thing to consider here is the health outcomes. And a study by the Paragon Health Institute compared the degree of state government responses to health, economic, and educational outcomes in all 50 states. And what this study ultimately found was the more severe the interventions, the worse economic outcomes, increased unemployment, and decreased GDP there was. And in particular, it's noted that Illinois' restrictions resulted in average health outcomes for residents, but hurt the state economically and in education. The restrictions most likely exacerbated the state's out-migration, the author notes at the Paragon Health Institute, saying that as people voted with their feet to flee states that had severe restrictions from states that had fewer restrictions. But there's something else, too, and we'll talk more about the next policy that I think was a little bit of a far stretch in some realms of remote voting, essentially, and the mail-in balloting that was enhanced and encouraged. So we'll get to that coming up here in a bit. But good morning. You're on WMAY.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can. If you can make it quick, please.
Real quick. So I work in biomedical engineering. I hear these stories over and over again. People think that they're wearing the mask to protect themselves. Those masks are worn to protect others. They're to catch the droplets. When people go into surgery, when the physicians wear masks, it's to protect the patient. And I hear it over and over again. I get tired of hearing it. When you wear a mask, it's protecting someone else. That mask is to catch the droplets to keep them from spreading to other people. Just for the record, it's not.
But even Dr. Fauci, all right, he said that the masks may have worked on the periphery, but unless you were wearing an N95 mask, it likely didn't work. And that's after he said, don't wear a mask. And then he said, okay, go ahead and wear a mask and so on. But that's just one of the policies. Another policy that was used during the pandemic was voting by mail, and that brought a lot of questions about election integrity, something we'll delve into next here on WMAY.